Hello, Axilla here for Fairhouse Gaming, and this is Tutorial Tuesday number 4. Now, this was going to be a Tutorial Tuesday with CriticalHit, and we were going to go over Mulligan Decisions. However, I've been unable to lock him down to do some proper recording. So instead, I'm just going to go over popular and considered very good in the current metagame neutral cards. Cards that you'll normally see at least a few of in every decent deck, really. Obviously there are those niche decks like the Combo Hunter which probably won't have any of these, but I do want to say that these cards are, just for their mana cost and for what they do, considered basically the best of the neutral cards. So here we go. To start things off, we have Acidic Swampoos. Now I'm going to do this To start this off, I'm going to do this list in their mana cost order, how they appear in the neutral card section. So, first of all, Acidic Swampoos. Now, this is a fantastic card, and it may be obvious why, but I'm just going to go over it because I'm going to do that with every card. Firstly, 2 mana for a 3/2 is decent. Okay, it doesn't die to the Rogue Dagger, it doesn't die to Mage Fire Blast. It doesn't die to all those little things, as well as the fact that it deals 3 damage, so it's quite intimidating. Not only that, but it's the cheapest way of getting rid of an opponent's weapon. Next we have Blood Mage Thalnos. Now, this is a legendary, and yes, I do have him in gold, he's very pretty, despite being a skeleton. Now, the reason why this is a very, very good card, not just in the meta, but in general, is because he just does so much. I mean, he's 2 mana for a 1/1, but that's not the important part. He's 2 mana for 1 spell damage, and you can draw a card with him if bad stuff happens. But Blood Mage Thalnos is so good that I use him, or I have used him in a lot of my decks. I used him in my Spell Power Rogue, my Miracle Rogue deck. I used to use him in my Warlock deck. I've used him in an Aggro Hunter deck before. I used him in both my Mage decks. He's just so versatile and so good. Just because of his like I said, because he's versatile, because of his versatility, and because he can achieve a lot. He's not a turn 2 play, and that's a mistake I see quite a few people doing, which is playing him on turn 2. He's not a turn 2 play. He should be played more in the mid game to help you get to the late game, or to help you combo off or achieve something. He shouldn't be just done as a 2-drop. Next on the list is Fairy Dragon. Now, this is an interesting one because it's 2 mana for a 3/2, like the Ooze, but it's so difficult to kill in the early game. This is probably the best turn 1 play you can do if you have a coin. Coin into Fairy Dragon is probably better than coin Defias Ringleader, in my opinion, because Defias Ringleader, like, I don't know, it's debatable, but Fairy Dragon is just so difficult to kill. Quite simply, I mean, things like the 2 mana for a 2/1 charge Murloc, I've forgotten what it's called now. That thing is the only easy way to deal with a Fairy Dragon, really. It doesn't die to things like Frostbolt or any hero power, since you can't target it. It won't die to the Rogue Daggers in a single turn. It doesn't die to a Whirlwind, doesn't die to an Arcane Explosion, doesn't die to a Cone of Cold. It's just overall such a good card. It's very difficult to kill, and it makes your opponents want to deal with it. And it's 3 attack, means that if they do deal with it, they're going to lose a lot of their early game power. Fourthly, we have Novice Engineer. Now, this is quite an obvious one, really. It's not necessarily as prevalent as it used to be in the metagame, but it's still a really good card. I mean, 2 mana, and you get to draw a card, and you get a 1/2. Like, there's no downside to this, really. Because it's a 1/2, it doesn't deal with things like Knife Jugglers and Fairy Dragons and stuff like that. However, it does deal with 2/1/1s, which is quite useful. Very useful card. It doesn't matter when you play it, really, as its use will always be there for its Battlecry drawing a card, and if you have it in the early game, like I said, it can deal with some of those smaller things like the 1/1s. Next is Shattered Sun Cleric. Now, this is quite obvious. Next is Shattered Sun Cleric. Now it's quite obvious why this is a good card. It's 3 mana for a 3/3, that's okay. That's efficient. However, its battle cry, giving a minion +1/+1 or a friendly minion +1/+1, is super good. I mean, do that to a fairy dragon, it's a 4/3. That's difficult to deal with. Do it to a knife juggler, again, that's a 4/3. It doesn't die to priests. Overall, it's very good. You can use it to just pump a minion so that you can take out their taunt or take out their one important creature that they have at the have out. Or you can just buff your stuff so that it's a lot less likely to die, and you can do that a little bit of extra damage. Very good card, very versatile. Not really much more needs to be said. Defender of Argus is next, and this card is probably my favourite card at the moment. I play it in so many decks, which is why I have 2 of them in gold. 4 mana for a 3/3, you know, not all that great. It's okay. But giving adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt. Now the taunt is kind of a side note. I would still play this card if it didn't. I probably wouldn't play it in as many decks, but I'd still play this card if it didn't give them taunt. The fact that it gives them taunt is an added bonus. The +1/+1 is very good. I've just gone over why Shattered Sun Cleric is really good, and for that exact same reason, Defender of Argus is 1 extra mana for pumping an extra minion. It's basically the same card, but it pumps extra minion and gives both of them taunt. This card is absurd. Also, your positioning on it can be quite important. I mean, you can only buff one of your minions if you really want to. If you want to keep another one from not having taunt. Like, it's just such a good card overall. It does so much, it works so hard, and occasionally it can just pump out that 2 extra damage you need, or pump up one of your minions so you can hit them in the face, and then they have to kill your taunts. They have to try and bypass your taunts, or get rid of your taunts, in order to deal the killing blow to you, or to just get through to you, something like that. So, very good card, and one of my favourites in the current meta. Next is Azure Drake. Now, this isn't as prevalent as it used to be, but I still use it in a lot of decks, and I still see it in a lot of very good decks. Firstly, 5 mana for the 4/4 is decent. It sits at that magic 4 attack, so it doesn't die to priest, specifically, and it does a lot more than that. I mean, Novice Engineer is 2 mana for a 1/2, and you draw a card. This is 5 mana for a 4/4, sits in the magic 4, and you draw a card, and it gives you the extra spell damage. Even if you don't use that many spells in your deck, or any at all, even if the spell damage isn't important, the 4/4 plus the drawing a card makes this like a really good card to play in any deck. It might not be the best card to play in specific decks, but it is a good card in any deck. This next card is the most significant card in my opinion in the current metagame. It is the best 6-drop in the game, and it's just so good. There are so many different things you can do with it. Its versatility is huge. The amount of decks you can play it in, like, you can play it in any deck, and it is good in that deck, really. And that's the Argent Commander. This card is 6 mana for a 4/3. That's not so great. Charged Divine Shield, however, fantastic. At 6 mana for a 4/3, and you deal an extra 4 damage to something. Basically, you will charge into a minion and deal 4 damage to that, probably killing it. And you just lose your Divine Shield. And even if you don't, you just hit them in the face and you still have a Divine Shield minion. But the reason why this is so good, and the next 2 cards I'm going to cover are so good, is because it does something the turn you bring it out. That's why charge cards are so expensive mana wise, because they do something the turn you bring them out. That's why Leroy Jenkins is the legendary Leroy Jenkins. 6 damage for 4 mana straight away. And you can kill the whelps quite easily with a multitude of spells. Like, charge is an expensive ability, and it's because it does something the turn you bring it out, and that's why Argent Commander is such a good card. On to what I refer to as the Power 2 now. Firstly, Ragnaros the Firelord. As I just explained, this is it's a good card because it does something the turn you bring it out. First I'm going to cover the card. It's 8 mana for an 8/8, which can't attack. You know, that's not all that great. it is decent for its stats. It's 8 mana for an 8/8, that's good. Can't attack, not a big deal. At the end of your turn, you deal 8 damage to a random enemy. So you play him, you end, he does something. Straight away, he has 8 damage to something. He will basically either kill a minion or 8 damage them in the face. That's really, really good. If you silence Ragnaros, he no longer gets a random 8 damage, but then he's an 8/8 who can attack. That's maybe even more scary. Like, Ragnaros is what I call one of the power 2, with the next card I'm going to cover, and it's the combination of 2 legendaries that is the most consistent and just the best 2 legendaries for like in the current metagame, and especially for control decks, because you bring them out, they do something. The turn you bring them out, there's no, you play it, oh, I hope nothing bad happens. Like, if you play Tyrion Fordring and they sheep it, you know, you're really, really upset about that, because that's 8 mana you've spent, and they've just dealt with it, and you don't even get the Ashbringer. So, Ragnaros and the next card I'm going to cover, they do something straight away. Fantastic cards. The other half of the power 2 is Ysera. Now, similar to Ragnaros, this does something the turn you bring it out. I mean, the fact that something does something the turn you bring it out, as far as minions go, is why charge is so expensive. It's why these cards are considered so good, because they do something the turn you bring them out. Ragnaros, the 8 damage. Ysera, you get one of the 5 overpowered dream cards. If you don't know what the dream cards are, they are Dream, which is 0 mana, return a minion to its owner's hand. Nightmare is 1 mana for give a minion +5/+5 until the start of your next turn where that minion dies. Ysera Awakens, is 2 mana for deal 5 damage to all characters except Ysera. Laughing Sister is 3 mana for a 3/5 fairy dragon effectively. It can't be targeted by spells or hero abilities. So it's 3 mana for a 3/5 which can't be targeted. And last but by no means least, my favourite one to get is Emerald Drake, which is 4 mana for a 7/6 dragon. I think it's a 7/6. It's so good. Like, you play Ysera, she does something the turn you bring her out. That's why she and Ragnaros are the most played win condition in top end decks, in top end deck control decks, and probably in top end decks. Now, all the cards I've just covered I consider the best cards in the current metagame because of what they do and because of how the game's currently shaped. However, there are some other cards that are really, really, really good in the metagame as well. Just, they were really good, or they are still really good, but they're not quite up to the tier of the ones I've just covered. So I'm just going to quickly go over those now and explain why they're good, but I'm sure you'll be able to see why they're not quite as good, or why I don't consider them the best in the meta for their cost. Firstly, in the secondary list is Knife Juggler. Now, Artosis used this to great effect for his Paladin deck for BlizzCon, which basically won him BlizzCon in my opinion. That deck is very, very reliable and very, very good. Combo a Knife Juggler with an Imp Master or with any token creating abilities or minions, starts pumping out a decent amount of damage if it stays alive. It's 2 mana for a 3/2, which I've gone over before. That's decent stats, and just overall a decent card. Not for every deck, but is very good anyway. Next I'm going to cover the 2 silence minions. Now this is Iron Beak Owl and Spellbreaker. Firstly, Iron Beak Owl, 2 mana for a 2/1 is okay. It deals with things like a Knife Juggler, for example, with its 2 damage, but more importantly is the silence effect. It's a cheap silence. You get a 2/1 which can deal with some minions, or deal that little bit of extra damage, or combos well with a hunter deck. However, it is the cheap silence which is mostly useful. The next silence minion is Spellbreaker. Overall, this is a much better card than Iron Beak Owl in my opinion. It is 4 mana for a 4/3, so it has the same stats as Argent Commander, as well as obviously silencing a minion. It sits in that magic 4 damage range which can't be killed by Priest, but it's not so useful in the metagame anymore because of the popular cards that are being played. Just for a couple examples, Argent Commander, if you silence it, it doesn't really lose its charge because it's already done its charge effect. It might lose its Divine Shield, but again, that's not like the most useful thing to silence. A lot of cards these days that are being played silence doesn't affect them, which is why silence has lost a little bit of its impact in the current metagame, and why cards like Twilight Drake might be resurfacing a lot more. I've seen them occasionally, so that's something to consider. Spellbreaker, still a very good card, still very aggressive, but not as prevalent as it used to be. Next is Chillwind Yeti. Now this is a card without an effect, but it's a very, very good card. It's 4 mana for a 4/5. As I've said before, it's got that magical 4 damage, it can't be killed by priests. However, it also has a huge 5 health. This might not seem that big, but you gotta think about it. If you coin this out on turn 3, if you have a turn 3 4/5 out, they are not going to be able to deal with it. Unless they have, unless it's a mage and they then just fireball it, not much is going to get rid of it. It's very difficult to kill, it trades quite happily because of its 5 health, as well as the fact, like I said, it sits in that magic 4 damage, it doesn't die to priest, it's a big minion, very, very good card, highly underestimated. Now we have Dark Iron Dwarf. This is 4 mana for 4/4, sits in that magic 4 range, and its battle cry effect is give a minion, any minion, +2 attack. This is really good because it gives it permanently. Dark Iron Dwarf is another example of a card that does something the turn you bring it out. You bring it out and you get to do an extra 2 damage to something. That's very, very good. So again, 4 mana for the 4/4 is decent, +2 attack makes it this high tier card. Very, very useful for aggro decks. Last but not least in this list, I'm going to cover Sen'jin Shieldmaster. Now this used to be known as the mother of all taunts. It's such a good card. 4 mana, again, for a 3/5. Doesn't have that magic 4 damage, but it's a 3/5 with taunt. Its massive 5 health pool means it's going to live against a lot of things. Its 3 attack means it deals with a lot of things. If you want just a taunt card, this should be the first place you look, Sen'jin Shieldmaster. If you don't want a 4-drop, look for other ones, but Sen'jin Shieldmaster is just overall a really, really good card. Very mana efficient, and like I said, a fantastic, fantastic taunt. Used to be the go-to taunt for every deck, and now Defender of Argus kind of is, because it gives other minions taunt. Still very, very good card. Taking into consideration all the cards I've just said, I'm going to give you a little brief example on a decent deck that would be made with these. CriticalHit had a daily quest to do 5 wins with a hunter or another class, and so he decided to make a hunter, but not go for the boring combo hunter. He decided to just basically take these good cards, put them into a deck with the hunter removal, and see how it goes. And he went 5-0. I have tested this, and I've gone like 5-2, I think I did in the end. So yeah, basically you go for class removal, so I'm going to add in Arcane Shot, a bit of card draw with tracking, because that's always useful. I'll put the golden ones in. Some other removal, Explosive Trap for board sweeps, Eaglehorn Bow, very, very good removal, a Deadly Shot, situationally good, some multi-shots, very good. Not going to be playing any beasts, so kill command's not that useful, and I'll put in a singular Explosive Shot. Oh, and a Gladiator's Longbow, because that's very, very good. That's effectively like a Pyroblast. It's 1 mana less, but it has the same damage as a Pyroblast, and you're immune when attacking, so you can split it up between some minions. Good, good. So, moving on to the minions, which I just went through. Acidic Swampus deals with the weapon. Blood Mage Thanos adds a little bit of spell power to everything. Synergizes well with quite a lot of things like Explosive Trap, for example. Fairy Dragon can't be dealt with very easily. Good card. I've got quite a lot of removal, so I don't feel like I need too much silence, if any at all. Novice Engineers, a little bit more card draw. What's next? I think I want Shattered Sun Clerics in here, because they're good for pumping up the Fairy Dragons. Defender of Argus, definitely want. Oh, and Dark Iron Dwarf, so I'll throw both of them in. Again, for pumping up minions, so you can get that bit of extra damage in. I'm pretty sure I would like the Azure Drakes. Extra spell damage, it synergizes well with the removal, as well as that drawing a card, just such a good card overall. And then, the card that you basically can't have a deck without these days is Argent Commander. Throw 2 of them in there, and there's your deck. Very simple, very quick, very easy to make. Like I said, you can do this with any class and just add in removal, and it won't be a bad deck. Hunter is not necessarily best with Hunter. In fact, I think this all these neutral cards plus removal for other decks like Mage, for example, are better than Hunter, but this is still a good deck. I mean, you've got basic removal, you can pump up their removal with some of your other cards, you've got ways of dealing with weapons, you've got board clears with Explosive Trap and Explosive Shot, you've got lots of card draw and Novice Engineer, Azure Drakes, some tracking, you've got even more removal with the Eaglehorn Bow, Deadly Shots, Multi-Shots, and you've got a lot of aggression with Acidic Swampoos, Fairy Dragons, Shattersun Cleric for pumping, Dark Iron Dwarf, and Defender of Argus. Overall, just throw in those neutral cards, add some removal for that specific class, and the deck will more than likely win you quite a few games. So thanks for watching. I've been Axilla for Fanhouse Gaming again, and if you feel like I missed any particularly good cards from this list, please tell me in the comments. If I got anything wrong, or if you have any questions, again, throw them down in the comments. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to be notified when new videos are coming out, hit the subscribe button. I'm sorry for not having Tutorial Tuesday last week. It's because I couldn't pin down Critical Hit for recording, and all this week I've not been able to pin him down again. So that's why I've had a change of plan with which Tutorial Tuesday I'm going to do, and depending on whether I can pin Critical Hit down or not, will be whether it's going to be Mulligan Decisions or how I think Hearthstone could evolve as a game. So yeah, thanks for watching again, and until next time.